Those who have sat in darkness have seen a great light, Matthew says in today's gospel. In saying this, he's quoting the passage from Isaiah from this morning's Old Testament reading to show that Jesus himself is that great light that has come into the darkness. It was at this point that Jesus began to call his disciples. A light shining in the darkness. It's a metaphor we've heard many, many times. Too many, perhaps. The trouble is, in our world, we very seldom have to deal with real darkness. When the sun sets, the street lights flicker on, we turn on lamps, switch on headlights. Very rarely do we ever have to encounter the sort of darkness that the ancient world knew. A darkness where night ruled, where fear ruled. A darkness where a small fire or even a single candle could be the difference between hope and despair, or maybe even between life and death. You only have to experience this once to experience this sort of darkness, to know that finding light in the darkness is more than just a metaphor. It can mean survival. I have 3 sons. Nathan is the oldest, Gabriel is the middle child, Julian is the youngest. In our early years as a family, we lived in Maine, and my wife and I liked to take the boys on hikes. We had a book called 50 Hikes in Maine. And from late spring to mid-autumn, we tried to get out onto as many of those hikes as we could. One year we went on a hike much later in the season than usual. We knew that we were pushing it. Temperatures were already getting close to freezing at night, and we knew that it was really only a matter of weeks, maybe even days, before we got our first snow. We hadn't actually planned to go that day, but it was Saturday and the boys were driving us crazy with the running around and jumping and screaming. So on a sudden impulse, we grabbed our worn copy of 50 Hikes in Maine, packed the boys into the car, and set off. We were already on the highway before we realized that we hadn't even chosen a destination yet. So where are we headed? My wife Pam asked me. I don't know, I said. Just pick a spot, someplace we haven't been before. She flipped through the book. How about this, she asked. She began to read. With long, winding walks through a wild, wooded landscape, this park is a hidden gem. It gets very few visitors. Be sure to take one of the free maps provided at the entrance. You will need it to guide you along the many options of forest paths. She looked up. Well, sounds perfect, I said. We arrived to find that the book was right about the lack of visitors. Ours was the only car in the parking lot. I guess it's because it's so late in the season, Pam said. The book was wrong about the maps, though. We did find a box marked Maps, but it was empty. What now? Pam asked. The boys had already taken off, racing each other down the path. Hey, come back, she shouted. Oh, let them run, I said. We'll follow the trail a while, then turn back. The boys were having a wonderful time. I had recently taken them to see the second Star Wars film, and for some reason Julian, the youngest, had adopted Boba Fett, a minor character, to be his hero, probably because it annoyed his brothers so much. He kept leaping from lower branches with his arms flung out and yelling, "Boba Fett!" After the third time of this, Gabriel, the middle of the 3 boys, ran back to me, clearly scandalized. Dad, he said, Isn't Boba Fett a bad guy? He didn't wait for an answer. Tell Julian he can't be Boba Fett. Boba Fett is a bad guy. We soon came to a fork in the trail. They're having such a good time, I said. Let's go a little further. You know, Pam said, the book does give some landmarks. Maybe we don't need the map at all. There's even a small drawing here that shows separate trails. Which one do you think we're on? I asked. She pointed. But what about that fork back there? I don't see that on the drawing. Well, I don't see any other trails that make any sense either. Okay, I said. Let's see if we pass the landmarks. If we don't, we'll turn around. The book told us to look for a fallen tree beside a large boulder. We walked on, but nothing like that came into view. Okay, I said. It's been long enough. Let's turn around. Wait, my wife said. There it is. There's a fallen tree. Where's the boulder? I asked. Pam pointed. That looks more like a large rock to me, I said. Pam shrugged. Large rock, boulder, what's the difference? I don't know, I said uneasily. It doesn't seem right to me. But still we went on. The children continued to run ahead, but by now my wife and I were walking in silence. Looking up through the leafless trees, I saw how close we were to twilight. I'd forgotten how short the days had become, especially this far north. It was growing colder. We definitely need to turn back, I said. But we've been walking for over an hour and a half, Pam said. The trail loops back to the gate. If we're on the right trail, it does, I said. I don't think we are. But if we are on the right trail, we must be almost there, Pam countered. If we turn around now, we'll just retrace our steps for another hour and a half, and it's getting dark. That's what's worrying me, I said. Okay, we'll go a little further. For some time, the path had been growing narrower and narrower. It was becoming harder and harder to follow. I called the boys back and told them to stick close to us. Even they had now grown silent. Suddenly I stopped. All at once, I could find no thread of the trail at all. I turned around to look behind me. There was nothing there. And I realized that for quite a while, I had been kidding myself. By this point, only the faintest light was still visible in the west. I knew that within minutes, it would be gone too. Then it would be very, very dark indeed. I took a long, slow, deep breath. Finally, I admitted to myself what I had been pushing from my mind for at least the last half an hour or so. We were lost. Okay, everyone, I said, hoping that my manufactured cheerfulness didn't sound as artificial to the others as it did to me. We're going to sit down for a while. Sit close together. That's right. Good. Okay. Guess what? I have a surprise for you. You know what we're going to do? We're going to camp in the woods tonight. Right here. Isn't that great? I glanced at my wife. Her eyes were large with fear, but she said nothing. Oh boy, Julian said. He flung out his arms to either side. Boba Fett! Dad, Gabriel said, would you tell him to stop saying that? But we don't have a tent, Nathan, the oldest, said. Or sleeping bags, or... I know, Nathan, I said quickly. That's what makes it extra special.